Have you ever wondered what it means when a country reveals a weapon so secret that the mystery itself becomes part of the threat? Because what America just showed the world may not simply be a new fighter jet. It may be a warning about the future of war. If you want clear breakdowns of big military stories without the usual noise, tap like, subscribe, and share this video with one friend who loves deep strategy. The United States has officially unveiled the F-47, and the message around it is as dramatic as the aircraft itself. The Air Force says this machine will become the world's first sixth-generation fighter. Officials say it is meant to replace the F-22 Raptor, the jet that for years stood as the symbol of American air dominance. Reuters reported that Boeing won the engineering and manufacturing development contract, worth more than $20 billion, after beating Lockheed Martin for the job. And right away, one thing became clear. This is not being introduced as a normal military upgrade. It is being introduced as a statement. But here is where the story gets truly interesting. The most powerful thing about the F-47 may not be what we know. It may be what we do not know. We do not know the exact top speed. We do not know the real combat radius. We do not know the full sensor package. We do not know how it will look from every angle, what kind of engine it uses in detail, or what exact weapons and mission systems are already planned for it. The design remains highly secret, and that secrecy is not a weakness in the story. It is the story. Because when a country says, "Trust us, this is more stealthy, longer range, cheaper than the fighter it replaces, easier to support, built to adapt, and ready to work with autonomous aircraft," that is not just a procurement update. That is strategic theater. It tells allies to feel safer. It tells rivals to feel pressure. And it tells the public that the next age of air combat has already started, whether most people can see it or not. That is why the F-47 matters far beyond aviation fans, defense companies, or military insiders. It matters because it sits at the center of a much bigger question. What kind of machine will dominate the sky in an era shaped by stealth, artificial intelligence, drones, long-range missiles, and contested airspace where one mistake can cost billions and change the balance of power? For decades, the answer was simple. Build a better fighter. Make it faster. Make it harder to detect. Give it stronger engines, sharper radar, better missiles, and better pilots. That logic gave the United States legendary aircraft. But now the battlefield is changing. Sensors are better. Missiles are smarter. Networks matter more. Autonomous systems are no longer science fiction. The old model of one amazing jet flying alone into danger is fading. The new model looks more like a connected combat ecosystem. And that is exactly how the Air Force is describing the F-47. Officially, the jet is not just a standalone aircraft. It is the crown jewel of the next-generation air dominance family of systems. That phrase matters. Family of systems means the fighter is only one part of the picture. Reuters noted that the broader program centers on a crewed aircraft that would enter combat alongside drones. The Air Force also tied the F-47 directly to its collaborative combat aircraft concept, which points to human-machine teaming instead of the old one-pilot, one-jet mindset. Think about what that means in simple terms. The pilot of the future may not just fly one aircraft. The pilot may command a team. Imagine a manned stealth fighter moving forward while nearby autonomous aircraft scout ahead, extend sensor reach, carry extra weapons, confuse enemy defenses, absorb risk, or open paths through heavily defended airspace. That kind of system changes the math of war. It changes what air superiority even means. The fighter is no longer just a sword. It becomes the brain at the center of a network. And if that network works, it could make older ideas of combat look painfully outdated. This is one reason the F-47 has attracted so much attention so quickly. It is not being sold as a slightly better jet. It is being sold as a leap. President Donald Trump, during the March 21, 2025 announcement cited by the Air Force and Reuters, called it the most advanced, capable, and lethal combat aircraft platform ever built. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth called it cheaper, longer range, and more stealthy than the F-22. Air Force Chief of Staff General David Alvin said it would cost less than the F-22, be more adaptable to future threats, have significantly longer range, and be easier to support. The Air Force also said the platform is designed to integrate next-generation stealth, sensor fusion, and long-range strike capabilities. Those are massive claims. And when claims are that big, two reactions happen at the same time. The first reaction is awe. If even part of that is true, the F-47 could become one of the most important military systems of this century. A jet with longer range matters in the Pacific, where distance itself can become an enemy. Better stealth matters against modern air defense systems. Better adaptability matters because threats are changing faster than ever. Easier support matters because the best aircraft in the world means very little if it is too expensive or too difficult to keep mission ready. And if the platform really works well with autonomous aircraft, then the United States may be building not just a fighter, but a new style of air warfare. The second reaction is caution. Military history is full of bold promises. Some become legends. Some become budget nightmares. Some arrive late. Some cost far more than expected. Some are technically brilliant but logistically painful. And some are so ambitious that the final product never fully matches the early language. That tension between promise and proof is the real heart of the F-47 story. Because right now we are standing in the space between announcement and evidence. And that space is where power, politics, strategy, technology, and storytelling all collide. To understand why the F-47 has been introduced with this level of intensity, we need to step back and look at the problem it is trying to solve. The F-22 Raptor is still one of the most respected air superiority fighters ever created. It has long represented elite performance in speed, maneuverability, and stealth. But it belongs to an earlier stage of the stealth era. It was built for a different strategic environment, a different industrial moment, and a different kind of technological race. Today, the United States is thinking less about isolated dogfights and more about surviving and winning in highly contested regions against advanced adversaries. That means range matters more. Integration matters more. Upgrade speed matters more. Cost pressure matters more. Sustainment matters more. Networked warfare matters more. So the Air Force did not want just another beautiful jet. It wanted something built for the next fight, not the last one. That is also why the official language around development is important. The Air Force said it used a fair and thorough source selection process, and it described the F-47 as the most capable and cost-effective solution for maintaining air superiority in a more contested threat environment. It also said the program benefited from a strategic pause in 2024, a pause meant to make sure the service was making the right decision. That detail is easy to miss, but it matters. It suggests the decision was not treated as automatic. The Air Force paused, reconsidered, worked with industry, matured technologies, and then moved forward. In other words, the F-47 is being presented not as a rushed gamble, but as a deliberate answer to a changing world. There is another detail that deserves attention. The Air Force says that over the past 5 years, experimental X-planes developed in partnership with DARPA logged hundreds of flight hours and helped advance stealth, range, autonomous systems, and operational concepts. If that statement reflects mature testing behind the scenes, then the F-47 did not appear overnight. It emerged from years of quiet preparation. That matters because it means the public reveal may be the end of one hidden phase, not the start of the whole story. Quick pause before we go deeper. If this breakdown is helping you see the strategy behind the headlines, hit subscribe, leave a comment with your first impression of the F-47, and share this with someone who still thinks air combat is just about speed. And that hidden phase may explain why officials sounded so confident. Confidence is easier when you are not talking about a sketch on paper, but about technologies that have already spent real time in the air. Still, the secrecy around the F-47 creates a strange effect. It makes the aircraft feel almost mythic. When people hear world's first sixth-generation fighter, imagination rushes in to fill the gaps. Some picture impossible speed, some imagine near-invisible stealth, some jump straight to science fiction. But serious analysis has to stay grounded. We should listen carefully to what officials have actually said, notice what Reuters has actually reported, and avoid turning a classified program into a fantasy object. So what do we actually know in practical terms? We know Boeing won a hugely important contract. For Boeing, this is not just a military win. It is a strategic lifeline and a symbolic comeback. Reuters described the award as a major boost for a company that has struggled on both its commercial and defense sides. Boeing has faced annual losses, execution problems, and heavy criticism in recent years. Winning the F-47 contract changes the emotional picture around the company. It tells investors, employees, rivals, and Washington that Boeing is still capable of winning the highest-stakes aerospace competition in the country. That alone gives the program weight. This is not just a new aircraft. It is a test of whether one of America's most important industrial giants can deliver when the mission is as serious as it gets. And on the other side of that story is Lockheed Martin, the company that built the F-22 and the F-35. Losing this competition matters. Writers noted that Lockheed has also faced frustration over delays in F-35 upgrades and had already been knocked out of the running for the Navy's next-generation carrier-based stealth fighter. So the F-47 decision was not only about future air power, it was also a reshuffling of power inside the U.S. defense industry. That industrial angle may sound secondary, but it is not. Air superiority does not come from speeches alone. It comes from design teams, factories, supply chains, engines, software, test programs, skilled workers, and a defense industrial base that can keep building when pressure rises. A nation can have the best concept in the world, but if its industry cannot scale, adapt, and deliver, the concept stays on a slide deck. That is why the Air Force's talk about digital engineering and government-owned architecture is worth taking seriously. Officially, those choices are meant to create a more streamlined development timeline and allow faster integration of new technologies. If that works, the F-47 could avoid part of the trap that haunted earlier major programs, becoming outdated before it is fully fielded. That trap is now one of the biggest fears in modern defense. Technology moves fast, threats adapt fast, drone warfare evolves fast, software changes fast. A rigid aircraft built around yesterday's assumptions can become a very expensive monument to the past. So when the Air Force talks about adaptability and modular design, it is not marketing filler. It is addressing one of the central dangers of building any next-generation platform. And that brings us to the deepest conflict inside the F-47 story. Should the future of air combat still revolve around a human pilot and an elite fighter at all? That question is not theoretical anymore. Reuters included a striking note. Elon Musk has expressed skepticism about the effectiveness of crewed high-end fighters and favors cheaper drones. Whether one agrees with him or not, the challenge is real. Drones are getting better. Autonomous systems are getting smarter. And every year the argument grows louder that unmanned systems can deliver more mass, more flexibility, and less political risk at lower cost. So why build a new crewed fighter? Because the US military appears to believe the answer is not man or machine, it is man with machines. That is a very different idea. Instead of throwing away the pilot, the F-47 concept seems to put the pilot at the top of a wider combat web. The crewed aircraft becomes the decision center, the trusted node, the platform with the highest judgment, deepest awareness, and strongest command role in the most complex moments. Autonomous teammates then expand the reach and options of that center. If that model succeeds, it could answer both sides of the debate. It keeps human control where it matters most, while using unmanned systems to multiply power and reduce exposure. That is not just a technical idea, it is a philosophical one. It says the future battlefield may be too complex for a single machine, but too morally and strategically serious to leave entirely to machines. And if that turns out to be true, the F-47 may be remembered not only as a new aircraft, but as the aircraft that defined the new balance between human judgment and machine scale. Now let's talk about the word that pulls people in faster than any other word in this story: dangerous. The title says the F-47 may be the most dangerous fighter jet ever built. That sounds dramatic, maybe even exaggerated, but there is a serious way to think about that claim. A dangerous weapon is not just one that destroys targets, it is one that changes behavior before a shot is fired. By that standard, the F-47's danger lies in what it could force others to spend, redesign, rethink, and fear. If rivals believe the aircraft really brings longer range, stronger stealth, deep sensor fusion, and effective teaming with autonomous aircraft, then they have to adjust their planning even before the jet arrives in meaningful numbers. They may need more detection systems, more counter-stealth work, more long-range intercept options, more dispersed basing, more hardened infrastructure, more electronic warfare, more drones of their own, and more money poured into the race. That is how powerful military systems shape the world, not only through combat, but through pressure. And pressure is expensive. Pressure changes doctrine. Pressure changes timelines. Pressure can even change diplomacy, because allies and rivals alike begin to calculate around a capability that may alter the balance later. But there is a second side to danger too. Dangerous weapons can tempt leaders into overconfidence. That is one reason serious observers should resist pure hype. A fighter, no matter how advanced, does not solve every strategic problem. It does not erase geography. It does not remove supply limits. It does not end the drone revolution. It does not guarantee dominance in every theater. And it does not magically become cheap just because officials say it will cost less than an older aircraft. We have seen this pattern before in military history. A new system appears. Public language becomes grand. The machine becomes a symbol. Then reality arrives with manufacturing friction, budget oversight, technical surprises, maintenance burdens, doctrinal debates, and the stubborn truth that war is never won by one platform alone. So the smartest way to read the F-47 is with two thoughts held in your mind at once. It may be revolutionary, and it still has to prove it. That balance is especially important because the contract announced so far covers engineering and manufacturing development, not full mature dominance on day one. The Air Force said the next phase will include producing a small number of test aircraft for evaluation, with options for low-rate initial production later. That means the journey ahead still matters enormously. Testing matters. Integration matters. Cost control matters. The ability to scale matters. Supportability matters. And the aircraft has to move from official promise to operational trust. That is a long road. But even now, before the first public proof of full capability, the F-47 is already doing strategic work. It is telling the world that the United States does not intend to give up the skies. It is telling allies that Washington still plans to anchor its power with advanced air dominance. It is telling defense companies that the race for the next era has entered a more serious stage. And it is telling rivals that whatever they believed about the slowing of American military innovation, the United States wants to shock that belief. There is also a psychological layer here that people often miss. Secrecy itself creates deterrence when it is paired with credible hints. Show too much and opponents learn too much. Show too little and nobody cares. But show just enough, backed by official confidence and a major contract award, and you create a cloud of uncertainty that can be strategically useful. Opponents do not just have to fear what the F-47 is, they have to fear what it might already be becoming behind closed doors. That uncertainty can be powerful, especially when officials say experimental aircraft have already flown for hundreds of hours. That one detail quietly changes the emotional texture of the announcement. It suggests that America's next air power chapter may not be an idea waiting to be born, it may already be in motion. If this is changing how you think about military power, share the video now, subscribe for more clear analysis, and drop a comment with one word that describes the F-47 to you so far. Still, there is one more reason the F-47 matters, and it goes beyond the aircraft itself. It forces us to ask what air dominance means in the first place. For many years, air dominance was often imagined as winning a contest in the sky. But that definition now feels too narrow. In a world of long-range sensors, cyber pressure, space support, electronic warfare, autonomous teammates, and industrial competition, dominance is not just about who turns faster in the air. It is about who sees first, who coordinates first, who adapts first, who sustains operations longer, and who can absorb shocks without losing the whole system. That is why the F-47 is so important symbolically. It represents a broader shift away from the old image of the heroic isolated fighter and towards something more connected, more distributed, and more data-driven. The pilot still matters deeply. The aircraft still matters deeply. But the age of the lone masterpiece may be giving way to the age of the orchestrated system. And if that is true, the most dangerous part of the F-47 is not its shape, its engine, or even its stealth. It is the doctrine behind it. A doctrine that treats combat as a networked contest of speed, awareness, adaptation, and coordinated force. A doctrine that assumes future wars will punish rigidity. A doctrine that tries to combine elite platforms with scalable autonomous support. A doctrine that says the winner will not just be the side with the best machine, but the side with the best evolving system. That is a far bigger story than one airplane. And yet the airplane still matters, because symbols matter. Nations signal through steel. They reassure through capability. They compete through industrial choices. They shape expectations through what they unveil and what they keep hidden. The F-47 is a machine, yes, but it is also a message about identity, about fear, about confidence, about technological ambition, about whether the United States still believes it can build the future before others do. That makes this a story about more than combat. It is also a story about national will. Can the United States still produce revolutionary military systems fast enough, affordably enough, and intelligently enough to stay ahead in a world where innovation cycles are getting shorter and strategic risks are getting sharper? The F-47 is one answer to that question. Not the final answer. Not yet, but an answer. And that is why the unveiling hit so hard. It arrived not as a technical footnote, but as a dramatic declaration during a time when the world is watching every sign of American industrial strength, political confidence, and military focus. Of course, none of this means the F-47 is invincible. No aircraft is. Every major platform enters a battle against expectations. The higher the claims, the harder the landing if reality disappoints. The program will face scrutiny over cost, pace, secrecy, production, and real capability. Analysts will debate whether the concept is too expensive, too ambitious, too centered on a crude fighter, or exactly right for the threats ahead. Those debates are healthy. In fact, they are necessary, because the stakes are too high for blind excitement. But the stakes are also too high for lazy cynicism. Sometimes a big reveal is mostly theater. Sometimes it marks the visible edge of a very real shift. We do not yet know exactly where the F-47 will land on that spectrum. What we do know is that the Air Force, the Pentagon, Boeing, and the White House have all chosen to frame this jet as a generational leap, not a routine replacement. That alone tells us how serious the moment is. And maybe that is the best way to end this story. Not with a fantasy about an unbeatable wonder weapon. And not with a shrug that says every military announcement is just another headline, but with a harder truth. The F-47 matters because it sits at the crossroads of every major military question of our time. Secrecy versus proof. Human pilots versus autonomous systems. Industrial weakness versus industrial renewal. Cost pressure versus strategic necessity. And deterrence versus hype. It matters because if the claims are even close to reality, this aircraft could help redefine how the United States projects power for decades. It matters because if the program fails, the consequences will reach far beyond one company or one branch of the military. And it matters because the unveiling itself tells us something sobering. The race for the future of war is no longer approaching, it is here. So when people ask whether the F-47 is the most dangerous fighter jet ever built, The honest answer is this. Maybe not because of one spectacular feature we can point to today. Maybe not because of one missile, one engine, or one secret number, but because it may represent a whole new way of fighting in the sky. A way built on stealth, range, adaptability, networks, autonomous teammates, and the ability to make an opponent feel late before the battle even begins. And if that is what the F-47 truly becomes, then the world did not just witness the unveiling of another aircraft. It witnessed the unveiling of a warning.